there and all around this thing. Now we're in part 2, guys, and so I'm just going to continue. They've kind of ruined it, though. Ruined Göbekli Tepe to where they put this dome over it, and Graham Hancock says ruined it by trying to protect it, because you can't sit out here at night now and see what the people would have been seeing when they were making it, and that would be much more important. There's not enough rain and erosion to cause something to worry about. It'll be here for thousands of years, but you don't want it to start eroding away real quick. But it's not going to save it that much what they put on top of it and stuff. It's not like it's eroding away real quick. But it was protected under gravel, right? But there's more over here that they haven't excavated all the way around, and this is just a slice of the pizza. And they decided to quit excavating, and I think that's the horror there, because on the other side, you don't know this, but on the other side, which they aren't doing, it's twice this old. And there are pillars with all kinds of things and a bunch of alien spaceships drawn on them. But you don't know, because they buried that 20,000 years ago and came around this side. And we're only looking at the end of the time that they were here. And it could go much older. It doesn't appear that it carried on much farther than it did in this area, and the people spread out. And who did these Natufians become? Well, it looks like they helped to form the Cattle Hoyuk area civilization, and then ran down into the Mediterranean. And there they are. And then there's those odd circles like what you find in South Africa. We found all over the area that haven't been archaeologically checked out as to the dating of them. Were those people there and then came up here and did all of this and then went back? Archaeology is so thin right through there, it's really hard to say. And they're saying the Natufians are between this amount of time, so if they find somebody just before that, they're not going to Natufian it, and it's somebody else. But it could have been them before and go and then come back. A lot of things like this aren't looked into, and people, when they get into this, start to just specialize in a certain thing so much. And that's fantastic, because you get to learn a lot about one thing. But a lot of people don't take and put big scope ideas together and get some other people that aren't involved in just archaeology, but archaeoastronomy and some other things, and put it together and see what you can come up with that other people will agree with, of course. You know, Planet Zenthar and all this crazy shit, that ain't gonna work for me. You're gonna have to go a long way to get me to Zenthar. I've tried to get to Zenthar before. You're gonna have to show me a lot of things. Oh, sure, there's little hints of aliens and all this thing going on, but what would they leave? Just little hints. Okay, whatever. This Göbekli Tepe thing, they're saying, appears to have spread like a contagion. The potent mix of religion and agriculture propelled this new lifestyle outwards into the Eurasian and African continents. This greatest revolution in history was underway. So these primordial Caucasians come down and wrapped around the Mediterranean all the way through the Sahara, and the Green Sahara had Caucasians in it, and I've got videos about that, and the people that were living there, and Gobero, and the mermaids of the Green Sahara. And you ought to check that out. There's all this old cave art and everything else. So they came on down, you know. And was there anything left? Well, there was huge devastation for everywhere. The nothing came. And there wasn't. Some people say there was 100,000 people left in the world at most. I've seen one guy scoff at that number and said, if it was half of that, I would be impressed. Other people say there could have been upwards of 1 million people at this time. Other people said there could have been as many as 10 million people alive just before this. But we don't find any skeletons because it's real lucky and rare and things. And what were people doing with bodies? Well, Vikings were taking and putting them on boats and shooting them out in the water on fire. Not going to find that one. They would bury them on the coast. Well, where's the coast now? 400 foot below water. Not anymore. Where a lot of people were living, some now is underwater now too. So there's your... well, we had a chance at a fossil, but ain't nobody diving and digging to find a fossil. One day we might have Star Trek type equipment where we can just scan the bottom and see through the silt and see, hey, here's some fossils. If it's worth digging up, we'll dig it up and do whatever. But if we got that good of equipment, hell, we can CAT scan through it and see all what it is. You don't have to disturb it. You can just mark it and then say what it has, and then everybody gets to see the same info you get to off of your equipment. Isn't it incredible? Wouldn't it be just shitty if the nothing came? But nothing lasts forever in this world. Well, we don't want the nothing to last forever in this world. And let's say if that comet would have all been together rather than fragmented and done air explosions as it appears, we wouldn't be talking now. There would be some bullshit left on Earth, and who knows if it would ever rise again to have a creature as sentient as us. Entirely possible. And it isn't that big of a size of objects that takes it. Just a few kilometers across that you think, well, hell, that landed in a city, it'd take it out. No, that was the dinosaur. So much kinetic punch and pow happens out of this that it doesn't, it doesn't take that much. You shoot a bullet in the sand and it makes a big crater, but you start multiplying that and its kinetic punch it's incredible. And that kinetic punch and shivering through the ground and everything caused all kinds of tectonic plate shifting and earthquakes and things like that went on too, and it rippled back through. And you can hear in old times how they had earthquakes. A lot of times we don't experience them near as much as they did, it seems now. It's because of things like that happening. Sure, there might be some periodic tectonic movement and it builds up and moves and builds up and it moves, but something kicked off a hell of a lot of release and move and stuff here just about this same time, it seems. A lot of volcanic events come after it, which seem to have calmed down and all but ended to occasional happenings. Mount St. Helens, and one pops off here and there, but some things are overdue, like Yellowstone. Nothing lasts forever in this world, though. In time, new cultural centers arose that outcompeted Göbekli Tepe. New fashions took hold in each capital, promulgated by those with much to gain, and Göbekli Tepe's star totally faded and apparently became lost to time. And it's just known about the ancient architects and the lords of Harada and these people that are described by the Sumerians almost in this time before time situation, almost in this, mythology that you look in their writing, and it seems like they're not even going with the Anunnaki thing. This is before that. This is like mythology thing. And then we find places like Kamyana Mohila has 22,000-year-old description of all their things leading into it, and because it has such a Sumerian flavor, it speaks of Anana, sacrifices to the gods and things like that. It's like, well, there's mammoths on the walls too, and so this appears to be of a time that much has to do with this. But there was a cataclysm that happened about 18,000 years ago, and another one about 15,000 years ago. Wasn't as dramatic, didn't end in the Ice Age, just bad things happened. We found these, like I say, 14 events that happened like this that are pretty well documented. I'll show you people saying that in a video because I think this one won't be tagged, and at least I get some 10-second where he just says the speech after I say it. 3,000 years after it was founded, Göbekli Tepe was purposely buried to protect its heritage. The messages written on its walls effectively witness accounts of the darkest catastrophe in 20,000 years, were hidden from waves of marauding invaders, scheming looters, and many others walked right over it. And it's amazing that they did. It's like, the Egyptians, what we can find because it was buried pretty much, and things like that. Things that were out in the open, it's lucky we have them, and all the temples that we have there. A lot of other things, what's lost? Well, what was made out of wood's not there anymore. And the ancient Egyptians weren't doing great stonework in the pre-dynastic time, and you get to Badarian and areas and stuff like that, and they're still Caucasians and stuff, and some of these people like this, but at this point they appear to fade to the point they don't have cattle anymore, and fade to the point that they don't have grain anymore. And at the point they're doing that, they're long past the point of making any stonework. Even the first buildings, got a video coming out that they tried to block, and so I cut part of it out, and I think it kind of sucks now, but what the hell. And it shows they made all the little things out of wood, but it's gone now. Just some little post holes are left, little chunks of wood, but they figured it out off of it. But if the sand was covered up anymore, you'd just not even know that existed, right? Well, you didn't know Göbekli Tepe existed. It was part of the nothing. Until, that is, they were redirected by Klaus Schmidt in 1994. 20 years after that, Paul Burley and Graham Hancock found the key to unlock these messages, and they were read properly again for the first time in 10,000 years, and by me 2 years ago, and by me about 3.5 years ago. Got one of my oldest videos where whenever they were showing those pillars on there, I said, that's zodiacal, and that matches like the Sumerian calendar and crap, blah, 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 and it does. But he started being involved with it 2 years ago, and went and checked out the site because he got hooked up into the Young Your Drives event thing and studying it, and maybe you ought to take a look at this. This is pretty neat. This guy get into it, and he's into the idea. I don't know about how much before or anything. I don't know about this guy, but this is what I'm told. But he found these key to unlock the messages, maybe properly again for the first time in 100 or 10,000 years. Sorry. Hardly believing that I was what I'd stumbled upon, I wrote a peer-reviewed paper with my colleague Dimitrios Tasiridis that hit headlines across the world. And boom. And they had been excavating it for a while, but trying to keep it quiet because they didn't want anything to kick off. And with things that were happening in roughly that area, they didn't want anything to get ruined or have those type of people find out about it, come over there and blow it all up for giggles, or something stupid. So let's try to avoid that, basically. But again, I have videos coming up that are going to show you that there are mounds all around there that are not quite to that level, but them there. But then again, we're looking at one little slice of the pizza. It's been covered up by a dome now. But what's on the other side? Is it twice as old? Is there scrap all the way around that? We're only getting a slice of the pizza. So it's possible we can see things like that go. Sure, it may get more primitive than anything else. Hey, I don't give a damn which way it goes. I wish it would just go. Let's see what we've got. It's odd. Can anybody be starving for information for so long to find out about our past? And whenever we find it, they give you one slice of pizza. And the rest of it is sitting right there, but they tell you you can't have any. And there's not really a good reason, except for they're going to save it for another generation. So we're supposed to wait 25 to 40 years before they'll let somebody else loose on another slice of the pizza. Are you fucking shitting me? Pick a slice. On the other side, end up making this a whole grand thing eventually. Build a giant wall around it. It's going to start having more and more interest to people and more importance to people, to the point that it will support its ability to buy these things. I mean, at this point, I hear they have a generator and they and kick on the lights at dusk and stuff, and you can see it like that, which looks cool. But hey, why don't you kill the generator and then let them look up at the stars? Well, you can stand out away from it and do the same thing. Well, that's not the same thing. That's like standing outside of Six Flags, watching a roller coaster go around, people screaming every once in a while. And get people's laptops in there. An interactive thing to where you can turn around and say, okay, well, what was it like 10,000 years ago or so? And where the sky was, where it comes up, and what are you looking at now? Well, Orion's here now, but this is where it was before. Things like that. He calls his paper a Fox paper. I don't know if they had something to do with Fox Channel and they made some event about it or something. Maybe he says something about it. Our Fox paper showed the animal symbols at Göbekli Tepe, apart from the snakes, represented for constellations. The same constellations that we know in the West today. The snakes emanating or threatening the animal symbols, therefore representing meteors from the Taurid meteor stream. It's entirely possible. People say, you know, this is the comets, these are the things. Or they had a hell of a snake problem. And snakes were the bane of all the animals, because no, it looks like it's more symbolic. So one pillar in particular, pillar 43, very famous, is especially important as it allows the writing to be decoded by using statistical methods. It's kind of a Rosetta Stone, and the message written on this pillar is profound. It's very likely encodes the date of the Younger Dryas event itself, written in terms of precession of the equinoxes. And so by looking at where they went, and they went through these things, not only does it make the zodiac of the Sumerian thing, you know, it lines all up to it, but it lines up, and I wish they'd show that picture, but nobody ever does, where somebody has done it. I guess they may have the copyright to the picture, but they've lined it up to it, or show it side by side, where, okay, here's the bird, here's this, here's that, and here it is on a pillar. So you're basically, if you're standing right there and you just look up, you're looking at what's drawn on the pillar that's right there. See, this pillar reveals many insights that overthrow commonly accepted norms of scholarship. It is revolutionary. They haven't really got caught up to Catalhoyuk and all those things yet, people. And where did it just pop up out of popcorn? All these places pop out of popcorn, right? I'm telling you, it goes back farther than this. For now, we have, well, Göbekli Tepe just pops up like popcorn. Well, I'm telling you that there's a group of them around there, and I'm going to show them to you, not in this video, but coming up soon. Remember this. And they just popped up like popcorn. Well, what happened before that? Got to be somewhere. Somebody be checking these mounds around and stuff. I don't care how sacred we think these are. Let's check a couple of these mounds out. And most of these, this wasn't sacred. This was just a little pregnant hill, they said. Potbelly Hill. It was like a little lump. It went around. There's lumps all around here, and there's a lump right there. Oh yeah, well, check out that lump. That's humanity's history. And it spans it back to a 10,000 year span. We were fudging at stuff 3,500 years BC not too long ago, and there's these couple of scattered places to 6,000, and all of a sudden damn near doubled it. And it's not something that gets like real primitive, but it's complex as hell. There's 50 of these Stonehenge circles around on it. I mean, it's uncanny, and it kind of is extreme validation, but it's only one, and I'm not full of my slice of pizza. I want more pizza. When I'm hungry, I can eat a whole damn pizza. And that's only a meal. This pillar reveals many new insights that overthrow common accepted norms of scholarship. It's revolutionary. Most importantly, it tells us that ancient people were far more sophisticated astronomers than previously thought, and it also confirms that Klube and Napier's coherent catastrophism, this is the people that started their catastrophes that happen to the world every once in a while, and it happened to the dinosaurs, and it happened to this epoch of dinosaurs, and this era and this era, and things happened, and something happened 10,000 years ago, and then after that they get stomped down by a guy that said no, it just happens a long period of time, and water erodes away surfaces, and wind with little bits of dust in it slowly erodes, and that's what has happened, and it's just all natural, slow, nobody needs to panic. Take a Valium we just made. It'll make you feel what we're talking about. It also confirms that Klube and Napier's coherent catastrophism, a theory that proposes multiple devastating cometary impacts on Earth, our meteor strikes and such, over the last 20,000 years ago, with perhaps more to come. Oh, this is the cometary people. Essentially, it tells us to be aware for the cosmos. It is not as safe as once thought. Oh, so this Napier thing must be the part of people that are hooked up onto this in the new age, in the 3.0, attacking this situation. Whereas the older guys were saying there was catastrophes, and I talked about in recent videos, and everybody squashed that for the slow, steady thing. This is that pillar in question, but this, as you can tell, is inside a building. This has been recreated and it's inside of the museum type area. I'd like you to note, very simply seen on the top of the pillar here are 3 of those carrying bags that you see in the Sumerians, and you see in places all around the world that's probably old to these people by this time. It's not like the day before this they invented baskets. How old do baskets get? Look, it's like you think a car melts like I talked about earlier. A basket doesn't, its fibers just wish away. You have no idea. Baskets could be 200,000 years old and you would have no clue ever. There would never, ever be found a basket weaving it's that old, even if they were experts at it. They had a metal bowl back then. It's gone. Not that I'm saying they had metal bowls and spaceships or anything like that, but people at least had a huge understanding of stoneworking, bas relief, zodiacal astronomical signs, the great astronomers, and so on. And it's a 1000 BC, 2003, no, this is 10,000 years old, and this slice of the pie may be one of the youngest. It appears that it's the end of what happened and they buried it, right? Well, what's the other stuff then? They do it all about the same time? Is this a much bigger endeavor than we think, and there were a whole lot of people involved, and people even need to reevaluate what we think about Göbekli Tepe? Or do they slowly go back through time? Does this side of it go before that side of it? We'll never know if these people sit around thumb up ass. So here's the depiction of the bird and some of the other zodiacs, and there is Scorpio. And you can line things up all with it, and sure enough, the sun comes up in this area and so on, but there's these other birds that aren't supposed to be there, and birds are symbolic of death, and these are more of the vulture type birds. A vulture, take that shit off of there. A vulture. It's the vulture stone. There's another vulture down here, seems like as a baby, like it may be having to start all over again, and there's a human with his head cut off. And you're like, what the hell does this mean? I don't know. And they've got other pillars that are wrapped around like a man, and it looks kind of like Easter Island, and they've got their tummy held with their bellies and a little belt there, and this symbology that's on it that you can find around the world in certain places too. Like, who went around telling these people this stuff, and where's their other stuff at? Are they all just nomadic, like early Proto-Indo-Europeans, to the point that we don't find great structures onto them because they made them out of wood, and they made yurts, and so they made chariots and wheeled things, used horses, and moved them around? And we find some of their burials and stuff like that going on later off that, but where they come from? Well, were they down here and spread out over there, and they came up with an idea, and you got the horse thing going on when other people didn't, and then came back later as a different people that we know of and shared it back? Yep. Any of this, though, is clearly not the story we tell our children, or that we were told as children. I've shared a lot of this with my children, but with academics across the earth, sciences hold the uniformitarian paradigm developed over 200 years ago by James Hutton. Now we are talking about the one that squished the other. This is the paradigm that squished the idea that every once in a while we have a big catastrophe, let's check that out, but which reassures us that Earth is safe from these kinds of devastating impacts, while the dinosaur-killing asteroid story has been brought by most. Uniformitarianism maintains that such events could not have happened over the lifetime of human development, and we only got hit by 3 rocks, and that dinosaurs was the last one, and everybody's just fine. And then we look up at the moon, and you see how many times it's been hit. And now we look at Mars, and we see that it's been pelted. Venus, all the planets, all the moons of other planets we can see have just taken shit all the way through all of this. Recently we had an asteroid come through and Shoemaker-Levy fragment up and destroy itself into the largest planet that we have, and it created spaces that would have each taken out of Earth. And if it would have just missed it, then it would have slung crap in the inner solar system, and then it would start going wing, wing, wing around the sun in a periodic cycle, taking a chance at hitting us on a tether bar floating around. Worse than that, though, the comet Inky has destroyed itself doing that, and it's huge in the first place, but what's left of it are giant, huge chunks. Inky is what we know of as it, but they're saying it's the remnant of a once thing that was 100 times larger than it and exploded going around the sun, and it stretched it out and stretched it out and stretched it out, and now we keep going through this in the Torrid meteor storm. Some stuff inside of that is much bigger. But these events are supposedly about as rare as fairies. Look, the story of fairies were fair people that come into a land of Proto-Indo-Europeans into Europe and create that thing that we know of about fairies in the first place. And you think they're pretty fucking rare, but they're not. Europe's full of them. Scandinavia and America's full of them now. You're listening to one of them who descends from fairies. But a lot is said about fairies, from fairies are gay to fairies are little things about 3 inches tall with wings, and they're butterflies, like a monarch butterfly that migrates. Staying safe from cataclysmic events. But we know that this view that they tell you is wrong. It's a delusion. Uniformitarianism is dead and should be buried. But there's this extreme fight to it, and you're going to have to prove something. And it's like, look, now we know these 14 things happened, but you're still saying none. But we already know 14 happened, and that isn't including the Younger Dryas event and the new Hiawatha crater. So it's 15. I don't think that makes it 14. I think it's 15. And how does it, how much does it get? Well, there could be twice that many. Some doubt it, but hey, airburst events are hard to record, and something that busts into a ice shelf that's 2 miles thick, a couple of kilometers at least, doesn't really leave any remnants, and especially whenever it makes it all melt and go brah and rush through the area right after it, it kind of wipes itself clean. Yep. In any case, every scientist should be automatically suspicious of it. In technical terms, uniformitarianism is an extreme form of explanation. It proposes that the only geological processes we have witnessed over the last few hundred years, corresponding to the scientific revolution, can have happened on Earth, or at least within the last few million years. It's probably the same thing. It effectively ignores rare events, in particular those originating from space. But as decent scientists know, rare events often dominate complex systems like Earth's environment, and in general, extrapolations are normally avoided altogether in science, are used with only great caution. So why has uniformitarianism been so popular? Why has it taken over? Well, I think people just want to be satiated. I'm not sure of the answer to this, he says, but possibly there's a psychological dimension to it. Perhaps speaking in general, we would rather not confront the dangers that face us. And so it's best if we just don't talk about monsters. Right? Especially if there's little that we can do about them. Well, peekaboo, we're of an age now that we could do something about it. And if it was headed at us right now, we would be thumb up our ass knowing about it. Whereas before you say we couldn't have done anything, although people could have built an extreme cave network that tries to save them. If it causes a tidal wave and that drowns everybody, that's not going to work either. What are you going to do? Well, we'll just make a big boat again. Yeah, I mean, that's had mixed results. Right? Let's shoot for a better result than that. We've got a shot at it now. We can shoot something nuclear in space. We can do things where you don't want to blow up, it'll make more of them. To save ourselves, we'll shoot 10 of them at it, blow them up all right after each other, and it'll turn it into little pieces, and we'll all be watching this fireworks show that really doesn't take out anything big at all, or much less, and then we can all come together as a people and fix it all and be right back to it, and it still will be seen as the most dramatic thing. Oh my God. But if we don't do anything, no one will ever be able to talk about it. Or it'll turn into a mythology. Yeah. That'll cause so much rhetoric that one day the priestly people will have taken back over because we did bad to God. Made it all happen, right? So now we gotta quit talking about it. And now it becomes a mystery situation, and now we're going through this epoch and 10,000 years of this crap again, whether we have any technology or not. Whether we step it up one, went up 100 notches, drop back down 92. You know, where we would be at. I've got another little video that I made, but questionable whether I put it out. It was what would happen, and somebody put a little video thing out that, like, this is the side of one of these asteroids, and here's the size of a city. And I just go off for 30 minutes. Need to get something to drink. Ran out of coffee, and then, hey. Nevertheless, from a scientific perspective, uniformitarianism is wholly unsatisfactory and needs to be bent. How can I be so confident in this? How can I state with such assurance that most of the academia has it wrong? Well, I and at least 70 other scientists, including the Comet Research Group, are right. Well, apart from the lunacy of uniformitarianism, there are three major lines of physical evidence, the cataclysm, to draw on. each of which is an ironclad and revolutionary in its own right. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily so ironclad when these people start trying to pick it apart. And then they stick their fingers in their ears and say, ah, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, ah. So you have to make a way through that. Combined, they all point to the same direction and provide an unassailable paradigm-changing case. Briefly, there's the geochemical, astronomical, and archaeological evidence. Beginning with geochemistry, it is now known that a disaster of cosmic dimensions struck Earth nearly 13,000 years ago. Nanodiamonds, microscopic iridium, enriched magnetic grains, and elevated levels of platinum, all of which are strong indicators of cometary and meteor impacts, have been found at exactly this date. At the base of the Younger Dryas boundary are the black mat, a ubiquitous layer of discolored sediment dating to the onset of the Younger Dryas mini-age. Their presence, spanning at least 3 continents, has been confirmed by multiple independent research groups within the last 10 years. Moreover, a frozen layer of platinum dust occurs in the Greenland ice sheet at precisely the same time horizon. Attempts to refute this evidence are badly flawed in a fundamental and surprisingly basic way, and an agenda-drawn concept that I can't hear you, I can't hear you. Can you see the Younger Dryas boundary layer in the black mat? This is becoming a famous picture of it that people like to use, but there are pictures of the same situation of a little cliff area, and you can see it right in it, going all the way over there, and then there's a little cliff there. It's over there too. It's where, well, it's going to be under every bit of soil over the entire area, and it's huge. We'll show you just how big you can find this on Earth. Next, there's astronomical evidence, observations of the comets beyond Jupiter, the frequency with which they enter the inner solar system, and their fragmentation within the inner solar system. All suggestions that intense comet impacts on Earth with global consequences are expected on the time scale of human development. They found all of these different impacts, and this shows you where they're finding that black mat layer in all this area. So far, inside of here, in each one of these numbered places, is a dig site event that they have found onto it. 16 is the core that they found in the continental ice shelf up there, but they found it all the way over into Anatolia. And wow, there's a paper on this that I've got pulled up too, but I don't want to do one that's going to be that long. But that's quite the effect. And you can see it didn't really affect much of South America and didn't really affect Africa and the far reach that's over here. Another interesting effect, the Alaska was solid at that time, and Siberia appears to have been kind of wide open. That's the reason there's so many killed mammoths in that one spot. Moreover, observation of comet fragments accompanying Enki in the torrid meteor storm stream along with a massive zodiacal dust cloud strongly suggests that they should also have occurred on the even shorter time scale of human civilization. In other words, we keep running through this like driving a car down the road and running through a mass of gnats, and we do it every year, twice a year in the torrid storm, right? So, and the other one, in the important one that we see is during the nighttime, is whenever we're having Halloween, the Day of the Dead, and that's the reason for it, it seems, and that's been something held from a time before recorded history all the way through. Indeed, it would be a major surprise if none were found, and I don't know if he's discovered it or not, but Randall Carlson and them talk about that while people have been on the planet, at least 14 times, we've run through things that would have been like, if it happened now, it would be the thing that no one would shut up about for 10,000 years. But they have, because they were shut down and shut up. and the knowledge slowly faded of the truth and reality, and truth becomes myth, and she gets webbed to a mist that just fades out, and then you can't see through it anymore, and you're riding around through clouds not knowing when you're fixing to hit something. Cruising around in a cornfield in a car doing donuts is badass till it gets up high enough to where you don't know where the field ends and you run into a pole or a fence or perhaps some equipment. Happened to a friend of mine. Hit something that they left out there in the field. Pegged it. Therefore, an event on the scale of the Younger Dryas impact nearly 13,000 years ago is entirely expected to have had happen. This is Shoemaker Levy straying its beads of pieces out. Imagine what would happen if one of those smaller pieces hit us. That's Comet 73P, which is Shoemaker Levy. Finally, we have the animal symbols at Göbekli Tepe and cave art. General view is that these are examples of animism, a kind of shamanism. And however, we now know that without a shadow of a doubt that these animal symbols are symbolic and actually representing the same star constellations. And some of this animism probably goes with that. We know that on the various equinoxes and solstices, they demonstrate that precession of the equinoxes was known many tens of thousands of years ago, and therefore that Hipparchus, which I'm going to do a video on, and some of the Greeks and where their knowledge had been pulled to and how they get their names, by the way. And the ancient Greeks were not the first to discover this effect in the 2nd century BC as commonly believed. Göbekli Tepe and Pillar 43 provide the key to understanding this, but our Fox paper left some room for doubt. This is going to go into a part 2. When it does, it's in your top left-hand corner, and we'll continue. This doubt has been effectively eliminated by more recent peer-reviewed papers, and so it's like whenever people started first mentioning this, and they go, where are the people? Well, the Sphinx could be older than it does and everything. Well, where's anything like that before? And all of a sudden something shows up, not 1,000 years before, but 10,000 BC, and goes, bam, how about that, smartass? And everybody wants to turn their head, it almost seems, as opposed to going, well, now let's do something. People that are in the field and believe in these type of studies are adamant about it. People that don't believe him are adamant that they should stop talking. This doubt has been effectively eliminated by more recent peer reviews by this time with Alastair Combs that demonstrate that the same zodiacal system can be used to read West European cave art such as Lagoon, which I've done a video on last year, leading into concepts of talking about this, in Chauvet Cave, which I've done one, in Altamira. Indeed, Lagoon shaft scene can be interpreted as a memorial to another devastating cometary impact, this time around 15,150 BC. And it correlates to one we found now. There's no mere speculation. Our zodiacal theory has been proven in a scientific sense. And when you look at this ancient cave art, they figured out that these dots here that make up Taurus, and this is Taurus, and the extra dots that make no sense in this shoulder area over here are the Pleiades, and this is denoting where this Taurid thing comes from. And people have seen this a lot, and they see this dead man sitting there with a boner, and he's got a duck face, it looks like, on him, and there's another bird there, and they talk about all kinds of things. But then there's the belt of Orion sitting right there, other animals around. But strangely, what I see nobody ever mention is there's a perfectly drawn straight line, a perfectly drawn straight line, and a perfectly drawn straight line that's put from there that actually has to do with something too, and it looks like trajectories or something has been shown off of it. They put you on Gilligan's Island, and you're not a very good artist. You'd be lucky to come up with something that looked better than that. Oh, sure, you know about modern depictions, so you might